Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Mary McGinnis, and I'm pleased to be offering a recording of the webinar that we had tried to offer on January 19th, 2017, but experienced a number of technical difficulties. So it's taken me this long to record it, but I'm pleased to be doing so. So today is March 11th, 2017, and this is Leading Through Change for the Vincent on Leadership, the HAY project within the School of Public Service at DePaul University. As I said earlier, my name is Mary McGinnis, and I'm your facilitator for this recorded webinar. And I have a long relationship with DePaul University. So many years ago, I served in the director role in the HAY Leadership Project, and was so pleased when Pat came on board. And I have now since moved on and have an independent leadership development consultancy and coaching practice. So it's truly rewarding to come back and work with DePaul University, particularly when we're in discussions around values-centered leadership. And I very much enjoy my role in the classroom, outside the classroom, helping people to exercise a leadership that is very much about empowering others in their own values and in their leadership for the common good. So today, we're here to discuss change and transition, and our agenda is really simple to understand, why is change so hard, particularly when it comes to people, to look at William Bridges's model of change as well as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's models of change. It helps us to understand the emotional impact, frankly, of change on others in our workplaces. And then finally, leading and facilitating others through change. Are there ways that we might be better equipped to support success on our teams and in our work when we're experiencing it as well as others are experiencing it? So I'd just like for you to take a moment to do a little bit of a reflection about your experience with change. So if you were to think about past or current experiences that you've had, particularly in the workplace, what is it that you like about change, and what is it that you don't like about change? So oftentimes when I ask this question in the organizations that I work in, I hear responses that are similar across organizations. So when asked what individuals like about change, oftentimes people will say, well, when change is introduced, it's great because we have some new opportunities. We have opportunities to improve, to eliminate barriers or obstacles that are getting in our way. A change is an opportunity to learn some new skills, some new ways of doing, some new competencies or behaviors. Change can be challenging in a very good way, where people are excited and motivated to put something new in place. And others may say that change is an opportunity to grow and to develop, particularly in relationship to their career goals. People will say what they don't like about change is that it takes them out of their comfort zone, that it causes a disruption, it causes discomfort, and that change may cause some anxiety or fear, particularly around uncertainty, that it's uncertain. When it's uncertain about what the change may bring, that brings some stress. I also hear that when we don't know why the change is occurring, that can be particularly frustrating. If change is brought on, we hadn't had an awareness of it or time to prepare for it, and we're not really clear on the purpose, what that change is going to bring. What's in it for me? So change can be hard. We know the pace of change is faster than ever inside and outside of our organizations. The way that I like to look at complexity and pace of change is just to look over at the world of technology. The internet became available to the public only in 1997. The personal computer has only been around for 20 years. And in 2017 now, we have robots in our hands, these smartphones that do our banking, that keep us on track with our goals, that give people the ability to contact us 24/7. We know that in organizations that product life cycles, for example, are months rather than years, so that our organizations must keep up with the newest and fastest technologies so that they may stay competitive and to adapt to an ever-changing consumer-driven environment. And not only is this happening in private industry, but this is happening across the board, whether or not we're in the private sector, public sector, nonprofit sector. We can't escape this. So change has become much broader in scope and in complexity. We know that people look at change in differently, and it very much has to do with our past experience with change, and certainly whether or not we decided to change or if somebody's imposing that change on us. As human beings, we're very much guided by our brains, and the brain's job is to keep and maintain homeostasis, or to strive for equilibrium. So when we experience a threat and the anxiety that comes with change, then our reactions to change may look like fight, flight, or freeze. So we may be aggressive or angry when change is upon us. We may be somewhat paralyzed or frozen, not knowing what to do, maybe overwhelmed by the change, or we just may want to run. We may want to flee from that change because unanticipated or unwanted change puts us into a state of high distress. Our bodies are going to react as if there is a threat of physical pain, real or imagined. So change, particularly when it's not welcome or it's unwanted, it can be exhausting. Exhausting emotionally, physically, and intellectually. And here is the lesson, folks, is that we all experience it. So no one is immune to those feelings that come with change. Oftentimes people will say in organizations, well, we've introduced this change and people are so resistant. Well, human nature is to choose the comfort of that familiar over the anxiety, as I said earlier, that comes from uncertainty or the unknown. So if we're experiencing resistance from people in the organization to the introduction of a change, it's usually associated with one or more of these three things. They may not have clarity or understanding about what is going to change. So people want to know and understand what the change is, why the change is occurring, and how it will impact them. Resistance usually comes when there is a lack of trust or confidence in the change itself. Could be a system, a process, a product, a program. So there's not faith or trust in that, or there's a lack of trust or confidence in those who are leading that change or executing on it. So in that case, it really comes down to whether or not people agree and are willing to empower and trust the leader And so when there's change and adaptation is required, people are very much looking for a exchange, if you will. So they will put their trust in leadership in exchange for tolerable levels of stress. What does that exchange look like? Well, that looks like the exchange for direction. So they may be needing some direction and clarity, as I just said. They may be wanting and needing protection, knowing that they will be able to endure the stress of the change and come out of it okay. And they're also looking for some order, because change brings chaos, it brings disruption. So they're looking to leaders to help maintain some semblance of harmony and familiarity. And then finally, resistance is associated with these emotional reactions. And those emotional reactions are due to that lack of familiarity, that discomfort that change will bring. So William Bridges is an organizational psychologist who has done significant work in the field of change and transition, and he offers us a great model, which is oftentimes referred to as the change curve. And there's a couple key concepts or definitions that we should understand. Number one, it's important to know the difference between change and transition. So let's define change first. Change is an event. It's an event that is situational and it's external to us. So a good example of this is, let's talk about a character named Joe. So Joe is 40 years old, in good health, presumably, and he goes to his annual physical with his doctor. And the doctor comes back with reports and says, Joe, everything looks great except for these results on this blood test. But I've got to tell you, I got to break the news to you and let you know that you've been diagnosed with diabetes. And, going forward, you're going to have to make some changes. So that's an example. Yesterday, Joe didn't have diabetes, or he wasn't aware that he had it. And in 2 clear steps between yesterday and today, he now has it. It's quick, it's tangible, it's concrete. And his old habits, his ways of being must end, and new habits must be formed. And that's when transition begins. So transition is a process where people have to unplug from an old world, and they have to plug into a new world. And it starts with an ending, and it finishes with a beginning. So the 3 phases, and we'll look at those more closely in a moment, are an ending, a neutral zone that occurs between the ending, and a new beginning. And what we have to appreciate and understand is that transition, because it is internal and it deals with psychological losses, it takes longer. So if we point to our character Joe, we know that the deeper work that he has to engage in is about this level of self-care in his situation that includes taking medication, perhaps checking his blood, exercising, improving his diet. He may need to seek the support of a trainer, of his doctor, of a nutritionist. He may be required to keep records in a daily journal so that he's more tuned in to his behaviors and the choices that he's making. And that's a lot. So there's layers to this too that comes with change. Depending on the event, there may be lots of change and adaptation that must take place. So transition, as I said, is very much around these psychological losses. And in the workplace, people experience these losses. So loss of space, for example, or a change in location can have a psychological impact. There's losses that have to do with identity. Someone's being transferred to a new job, or if they lose a job, they are dealing with a loss of status, a loss of identity, of pride. There may be loss of teammates. So if there are changes in structure or workforce, then people will experience a loss. Not having the camaraderie that they experienced on a team, for example. And there may be that loss of security or comfort. So, as I said, there may be feelings of anxiety because one is feeling that their security is tentative, or they're experiencing that discomfort of, what is in this for me? Where will I be as a result of this change? So here's a nice image that helps us to see these phases of transition that Bridges is talking about. So as I said, a change is an event. Yesterday, Joe didn't have diabetes. Today he does. And now he is experiencing an ending. So in that first phase, it's very much about letting go of the past, letting go of those old habits, maybe even values that Joe had, and getting some closure, being able to say goodbye to those old ways. And as our character Joe moves through this transition, he is spending most of his time in the neutral zone, and that's an in-between time, and it feels chaotic. So he may be have a very strong willingness to start a clean slate, to approach this problem positively. But as he experiences some of the challenges or the difficulty, he may step back or may retreat from the problem. So in the neutral zone, it really is about moving forward and retreating, and it's internal. So people are having sets of questions. Can I do this? Is it possible? What does it mean for me? Oh, yes, I can do this. But then they experience a setback, and they're questioning themselves. So there may be doubt, and where there's doubt, certainly there is fear. So Bridges calls this the wilderness, this time between the ending and the beginning. And beginnings are that moment when we finally get on with it. We've moved through it, the difficulty, we've overcome it, and there's a new chapter. And in that, we may have grown and learned some new things, and potentially experience a sense of renewal. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross brought us a model for transition some years ago when she did significant work on grief. So I always bring it forward because some of you may have a familiarity with it, but it also helps us to see that transition takes time. And so you can see here on the x-axis that there's that dip in the neutral zone, and it's that longest period in the change curve. And there on the y-axis, we see morale and competence. That over time, as organizations and individuals go through change, there is a wavering that happens in morale and competence. So it's lengthy, and it's imbued with emotion. So here you can see that an ending has occurred, and individuals may be experiencing a shock. Maybe a surprise or a shock, and then the reactions may look like denial or disbelief. So in grief, this is a natural reaction. People looking around for evidence that it might be true. And as individuals move through that neutral zone, there's a frustration. There could be anger. As I said, there's an approach, and then there's a retreat. And if there's not good supports there, good coping mechanisms, it certainly can lead to depression. People are lacking in energy, they're lacking in motivation. So, as leaders, we're certainly looking for ways and means to help support people through transition so that they can get to that upside of the curve where they're willing to experiment, be creative, try new things, have a skepticism that's healthy rather than unhealthy, and then learn how to work in that new situation and to feel more positive and to eventually integrate what they've been learning and those skills of adaptation into a new beginning. Everett Rogers gives us a really nice model to help us understand the reactions that people experience through change in his typology. So he offers 5 types of responses or categories that most people fall into when challenges or opportunities are introduced into a system or an organization. And what you'll see here is that the distribution follows a bell-shaped curve, and that most of us will fall into the middle of that curve. So the first type we call rough water swimmers. They're also known as the innovators. So these are the folks who are relatively early in adopting a new idea and change. These are the folks who go off and get on that waiting list for the newest version of the iPhone because they're venturesome. They're eager to try new ideas, and they're able to cope with a high degree of uncertainty. And in fact, they're okay with that. They will accept the setback because they know they're out there. They're out there in the front, and they're trying some new things. So they may be a little risky or daring. Secondly, we have the water skiers. That represents about 14%. They're respectable. They're early adopters. So they may look out at those rough water swimmers who are ahead of them, seeking some advice and information. So these folks are weighing the change and the new ideas judiciously. And because they do get on board earlier than the majority, they signal to others the decreased uncertainty. So in organizations, they may be sought out to be the change agents because of that. They're really saying, hey, it's okay, come on along. So those inner tube riders are right behind them. And as you can see, that's a larger percentage, 34%. So the inner tube riders are the early majority. And they're deliberate. We would call them deliberate because they're deliberating before they get on board with a new idea. And they follow with a deliberate willingness, but they're seldom out in front. So they're watching the water skiers and the rough water swimmers. They're listening, they're learning, and they're deliberating and deciding. Those that are anchored in the status quo are another 34%. So whereas the inner tube riders were the early majority, these folks are a little bit more skeptical. So we call them the late majority. So they're cautious, and they may not get on board or adopt ideas until that majority has done so. So that, 60% or so there out in front of them. So they can be persuaded, but oftentimes, they're waiting for all that uncertainty to be removed before they feel it's safe to adopt. And then finally, we have the salmon on parade, or the laggards, which is the technical term. That's the 16% who are traditional. They're the last to get on board, and their point of reference is the past. You know, they're looking in the rear view mirror because they're very suspicious of innovation and those change agents that are out in front. And because they are extremely cautious, they may be viewed by others as anti-innovation or anti-progress. So a couple of lenses, if you will, to be able to look at change. The change curve, as I introduced, which is Bridges' model, and helps us to see those three phases. Kubler-Ross helps us to see the emotional reactions, and then Rogers' model helps us to see that, you know, the majority of people, when experiencing change in a system or an organization, are not going to be out ahead. They're going to be in the middle there. And so in leadership, there's the lessons for leadership is that we have to meet people where they are. And we also have to recognize that people may not be where we expect them to be. And indeed, that may be, and oftentimes is, the majority. So when I'm teaching in a live version of this course, I often ask the leaders with whom I'm working to give some consideration to what they expect from their leaders and their managers in the day-to-day as well as in times of transition. And the reason why I do this is because I'm interested to know certainly what they expect, and then to ask the question of them, are you then giving those that you lead and that you manage what you expect from your leaders and managers? And oftentimes there's a gap there. And so it's often wise to ask ourselves, what is it that we're needing from others, and are we providing that to others as well? Because in leadership and management, it's been my experience, you know, over 20 years as a leader and manager, that we often get into a type of tunnel vision where again, we've got to get to the bigger picture, be able to see that clearly, and to reflect on ourselves in that bigger picture, and as well as reflect on how we help others to be successful. So this next slide is really helping us to see what leaders do in times of transition. And leaders see that bigger picture. Leaders are maintaining a perspective at the 10,000 foot view, as we like to say, or at that on the balcony. They're on the balcony seeing that bigger picture, and helping others to see the bigger picture too is particularly helpful in times of transition. Change leaders have a high threshold for uncertainty. And so they're using creativity to manage the ambiguity. And what I mean by that is that they're normalizing to some degree ambiguity that comes with change, and helping people to creatively move through that by identifying different kinds of strategies, different ways to negotiate and move through the transition. You know, I said the other day to two colleagues of mine with whom I'm working a project, you know, it's, hey, I would rather be marching through this swampy marsh with you than with others. So, you know, that's an example of, hey, this is tough. This is a tough project, but we're doing it together. We're wading through this marsh and trying to get to the other side, knowing that we don't have all the answers. They focus on the sphere of influence and the span of control, no matter how narrow that is. They're looking for possibility rather than problems, and they're exercising optimism about finding solutions. So they're looking for solutions and opportunities, and rather than focusing on a problem. Change leaders are practicing emotional intelligence because they know that there is going to be discomfort there, that's part of the context, that's part of the situation, if you will. So they're operating with this reserve of goodwill and patience and energy, and they're not spending inordinate amounts of time trying to make people feel better because those feelings are there. So rather, they're helping others to succeed in spite of or despite the discomfort. And they're doing that by making the needed adjustments. They're communicating and communicating and communicating all the time. So people prefer predictability. People prefer predictability to uncertainty, as we've spoken about today. So in that communication, change leaders are doing a number of things. They're really making the link or the connection between what people already know and understand to where they're headed together. So an example of this is to say, hey, look, it's not a wholesale change. We're bringing forward the best of what we've already achieved, and we're pulling that through. Let me help you see that in the form of a story or a metaphor. Let me help you to understand that we're part of a movement that is really building or creating improvement based on what we've already achieved. They're warning people far in advance of a change. So involving them in discussing the change and when it might be coming and how it may impact them. So the reason why they do that is because people really want information. And with that information, they feel they have that control. They feel that they have a stake in it, and so they can plan for it. So the sooner you can introduce that change is coming, the better off people are feeling in terms of their confidence and their comfort with the change. Specificity is important. So being as clear around what is going to happen and as transparent as possible is very important. And then change leaders practice what we call the 4 Ps. So anytime they're discussing or communicating change, they're explaining the why. Now, why is the change occurring? They're helping people to see that bigger picture of what's in it for them, what's in it for the organization, what's in it for the team, what's in it for our clients and our customers, and the sustainability of the organization. And then also helping people to see in very concrete terms the steps that will be taken and the time that it will take. And then finally, their role, explaining, helping others to understand the role that they will have in the success of the change. And I might add, they're doing this in genuine and authentic ways. Change leaders facilitate others through transitions. And so they're doing that by building resilience, monitoring the issues that are coming up, and monitoring how people are responding, addressing their needs, understanding their needs, and then using strategies to help with that transition. One of those strategies is communication, as we've just discussed. But another strategy, too, is recognizing accomplishments, acknowledging results. So really looking for opportunities to celebrate. So let's walk through these just briefly. So resilience is about a couple things. One is that, yes, it's building change readiness. So exhibiting these characteristics or qualities that look like positivity, focus, flexibility, organization, and proactivity. But I also think resilience has very much to do with accepting that, you may get knocked down. It may be difficult, and that the best that we can do is just to get back up and to keep going. So resilient individuals are doing just that. It's not about being a rock or impenetrable, because we're all human and we're all trying to move potentially through a difficult situation. But by showing and demonstrating that we can get back up and keep going, we're really modeling the way for others. So, building change readiness and resilience looks like doing a number of things. Having positivity, being optimistic, which Daniel Goleman will say in his work on emotional intelligence is absolutely a leadership skill. So optimism needs to be practiced, and having a can-do attitude is very much about embracing it and behaving in it and accepting that as a habit. Focus, keeping people keeping people informed so that they have a strong sense of that purpose and they know the why, and they're willing to make sacrifice and commitment to the challenges that may come. Flexibility, being organized. So again, because transition introduces chaos, followers are looking to their leaders to manage that chaos in an organized way. And then proactivity. So leaders must ask themselves the questions: how can I, if I know and understand that adaptation and new beginnings requires learning, how do I then make it safe for people to take risks, make mistakes, maybe fail, and to learn from that? So good leaders create the environments where people can test and try out new things, and fail without consequence. My favorite quote about change and transition comes from Ferguson. And there's a picture of Linus over there. So Ferguson is saying, it's not so much that we're afraid of change or so in love with the old ways, but it's that place in between that we fear. It's like being in between trapezes. It's Linus when his blanket is in the dryer. There's nothing to hold on to. So leadership through change and transition requires noticing and understanding that. And, having strategies to respond to people when they're experiencing that in-between place, when they're marching through the wilderness, as we say. So using that change curve, using Rogers' typology are lenses again that we can use to help predict how people might respond, and then identify supports, ways to help move people forward and find opportunities in change. So let's look at that. So briefly, so when endings occur, what you may want to be looking for are those feelings of shock and anger and agitation. So if those are coming up for people are experiencing that, then we can take actions as leaders. And the actions that we can take look like a number of things here on your screen. But what I'll highlight is we can listen. We can, again, use that very important active listening skill of leadership and listen for what people are saying, not only in their words, but what the meaning is under the words, and demonstrate a care and a concern that attends to those emotions. So rather than be defensive, what we want to do is clear up any misunderstandings and be responsive. And that if people are objecting, they're objecting because they're having a natural human reaction to a change, and they haven't been prepared for it. They have not been prepared well, is usually what's at play here. What else might be happening in endings are these feelings of guilt and resentment and stress and depression, fear. People are fearful, as I said earlier, of their security. They're losing comfort. They're losing status. They may be losing familiarity that comes with, working in one office building and moving to another one. They may be losing confidence and in having been able to perform particular tasks extremely well. So loss is here and it's at play. And again, listening is vital, and providing support and empathy, as well as helping people to see and know and understand that there may be a loss here, and that that should be honored. So continuing to respond to questions and concerns, so that empathy is extremely important. As individuals go through the neutral zone, that's the wilderness, lots of ups and downs. It's that approach and that retreat. So there's anxiety. So it may look a little bipolar, frankly, in terms of people feeling upbeat one day, somewhat frustrated or despondent the next day. So here it says polarization, that rush forward or going back. And so that feels chaotic. And you may not see that on the outside, but people may be feeling it on the inside. So we want to be listening. We want to be encouraging people to try some new things out, giving them that security and comfort that when they do try these new things, that they're not at risk for a consequence, and use our coaching skills. Provide support for learning new skills and knowledge, as well as providing that encouragement and empathy. As people move through that wilderness, the neutral zone, into some new beginnings, you may begin to see some different behaviors and feelings which look like cooperation and hope or satisfaction. And those are signs that they're moving towards that integration that we talked about. So in leadership, we can support and affirm that, help people to see that we recognize that they've come a long way, and celebrate successes, and take time to reflect on what has been learned, what insight has been gained. Those lessons learned, those debriefs have value for building the team and preparing people for the next round of change and transition. So just a few tips, just a few reminders. Communication, 6 times and 6 ways. So having a message, repeating that message in different ways and different modalities is important. Listening is 2 times important as talking. And recognition, you just can't undervalue recognition. So I always like to ask leaders and managers, have you said thank you today or yesterday to those people who are helping achieve the results and the goals that you're setting out to accomplish with your team? Recognition, support, thanks, and gratitude is a motivator. and helping people to see progress, how far they've come individually and collectively, is something that we should be doing in our leadership. So remember, people experience transition differently, and they're going to move through that at different speeds. Some may be those rough water swimmers, others may be there in the back end, salmon on parade. Most people are somewhere in the middle. And we might take note that if we've been gearing up for a change and planning for a change, we're far ahead in our knowledge and understanding. And we have to recognize that people have not caught up with us potentially. We've got to give them that time to move through that curve. So just a few things. Everyone is going to respond differently, and it depends on a number of factors. How well were they prepared? How familiar are they with this type of change? Do they know and understand what's in it for them? Are they at a stage of life where a threat to their job, for example, raises more anxiety and fear because of the developmental level that they're at? Are they young in their career, or are they advanced in their career? This is another observation that I hear all the time, that we're talking about the change curve in relationship to one situation, but many people are experiencing multiple changes, and they may be at different places along the change and transition continuum. So an example for me is that in the establishment of my new role, which I've been in now for 3 years, I'm somewhat at the end, new beginnings. I've made a transition out of organizational life to consulting life, and I'm at a new beginning there, having endured some of the learning and the stress that's come over time. However, I'm the parent of a 17-year-old daughter who is about to embark on graduate from high school and go off to college. And so I'm very much at the beginning of this change that's occurred between her childhood and now adulthood. And so I'm very much at the beginning, trying to move through what's happening for her. There's always opportunity and ability to express vulnerability and uncertainty, and so that doesn't necessarily mean about putting the hood fully up, as I like to say. It's very much about helping people recognize that maybe you've gone through that experience, that and offering to them some of your experience and wisdom. So my encouragement is keep calm and carry on. We know as Vincentian and value-centered leaders that leadership is behavior. It is action and example. We always have an opportunity to model the way. And in leadership, we know that our own self-development, our own development and growth is important. So with our own insight and awareness and development, we can be models for how to endure and withstand change. We can be examples for others. So, as I said, keep calm and carry on. I am a resource too, along with Vincent on leadership, of course. So I've put together some resources here that you may want to consult. And I'll just point them out. Vincent on Leadership blog. So Pat is writing about leadership topics, and she's got wisdom that you may want to draw on. Bridges wrote an article called Getting Them Through the Wilderness, a Leader's Guide. That's available on the internet. You probably can just Google it and find it, but if you'd like for me to send you a copy, I'm always happy to do that. You can reach me through my website there, which is marymcginnis.com. And then certainly in leadership development and leadership training, this topic of change and transition is always coming up. So take advantage of the leadership development and training that Vincent on Leadership is offering. So again, thanks for the opportunity to record this webinar. Hopefully I'll be able to be with you in the future in real time. And I'm looking out my window and the sun is coming up here in March. And as I see the sun shining and the tulips starting to push through the earth, you know, it always is a great reminder for me that change and transition is part of the natural cycle. And the more that I can remind myself of that, the better I can cope and help others to endure those stressors of change that we all, of course, experience. All right. Again, have a good one. Take care.